Hey, great to have you here. So back today with another Dexter related video. I know it's been a while since I put out a Dexter video, so apologize for that. I did do a community post the other day talking about the trailer that we got for Original Sin a little bit, specifically the beginning intro where we had the representation of Dexter from the end of New Blood in Resurrection. So it's going to be interesting to see how we get engagement for Original Sin, because I feel like I'm so focused on Michael C. Hall and the present timeline that's going to be a while till we get that. That's not supposed to come out till summer of 25. So for right now, we have to focus on Original Sin specifically. And we'd love to see your guys' thoughts down below as far as any hopes you may have. That's the intent of this video, is just discussing my kind of wish list and my hopes for the season as a whole and things that I would like to see them do in Original Sin, especially since we do have to wait, unfortunately, for Resurrection in the present timeline. So I won't waste any more time. We're just going to jump right into Original Sin, which I will call out. This comes out in a couple weeks, so we're only 2 weeks away from the debut of Original Sin, and really looking forward to this one. I'm cautiously optimistic. As I mentioned, Resurrection is really where I have an interest because that's kind of the current situation. I don't love prequels generally. It feels like we know where we wind up, so it doesn't feel as impactful or as suspenseful because you can be like, okay, this person's not around anymore, this person is. There's a little bit less tension when that happens, but that's just my opinion. Prequels can be done well, though, if done right. So as far as my wish list or hopes for Dexter Original Sin, we're going to have 5 things we're going to cover today. The first one being investable new characters. So we obviously know our established characters and the new actors taking on those roles, but we have these new characters as well, which, as I mentioned with prequels, is a little bit tough to figure out because you're like, I don't have the experience with them. Are they going to do a good job? One big factor I will say is that you have some big name actors in those roles. You have Sarah Michelle Gellar playing one of the roles. You have Patrick Dempsey playing one of the roles. He's played cops so many times in things, so feels like those are 2 veteran actors to include here for some of the new characters we do have in the plot. But I think we have to have somewhat of an upfront, intriguing plot point or pitch for why we care about these characters, especially because they are new to the Dexter lore and the franchise as a whole. So definitely come out with something heavy in the first few episodes to say, this is why I'm invested in this character and I care about them, even if they're not somebody that I knew from previous Dexter series. Because otherwise, without that, we're just going to gravitate towards our fan favorites that we already know today. So big factor number 1, investable new characters to include. Second one being having an immediate threat. So Dexter, obviously, this is kind of a backstory. We've gotten a lot of his backstory already in flashbacks and things like that. I don't think they should start off with doing more background and lore too much in the first couple episodes. I feel like it's not a new show necessarily. We don't need like a first few episodes. Hey, what's going on here? Who are the characters? We know most of these characters already. We know their backstories. So I think you should probably start off with somewhat of an immediate threat. I think, honestly, by the end of episode 1, we should know for the most part who our big bad is, assuming they're going to follow that same pattern of having a big bad per season. I think in episode 1, we should find out who it is, because you need to keep that hook and that interest in Original Sin. We have Dexter fans. We have people that are definitely going to be interested in Resurrection because they watched New Blood. But Original Sin is kind of a different thing. It is the same universe, but it's a little bit different. It's not the same as far as just getting, hey, you're a fan of Dexter, come watch this show. Feels like if they strike out on the first episode, it can be tough having that retention of fans. So I think why not go heavy on the first episode, show us who the killer is, or just give us something that we're really interested in, that story of the big bad potentially. Doesn't need to be Trinity level, but I think you need to come out pretty heavy with like an ice truck level threat in that first episode, in my opinion. I don't think waste any time with backstories or hook, or you're going to wind up losing fans. And we, as I mentioned, we know a lot of the backstory already, so not something we really need right off the bat, I would say. So just come out swinging would be my recommendation. Number 3 is explore the familiar faces. So I mentioned we have these new characters, but I think some additional lore with the familiar characters could be beneficial. I think you have to do it smartly, though, because we obviously know some of the future of these characters, so you can't do something crazy like, oh, you can't have Batista be a killer, because that's not where he winds up. Do some depth, though, to saying, like, so he's really close with Dexter and Deb, like he treats them like family. Maybe have something like that where he gets to really know them better. So it explains a lot of future developments that we do get in the Dexter series, but do in a way that we didn't fully expect. So it's still interesting, but it's not, out of left field as far as why would they have done that? That's not their character type. And building off of that, I think a big chance they have here is to develop Harry. He was a huge factor for me in the original Dexter series. Really loved James Remar playing that role and just having that conscience of Dexter and just talking to him whenever he was in debate about something. He's the only character that we really got in the original Dexter that we never really wound up having alive. He obviously played a big role in it, but this is the first time we're getting him, Harry, in the flesh, alive. So I think him specifically, you can do a lot to develop. Like one area that they could go down a little bit, I'm a little bit cautious to say this because I feel like it was a big gripe for fans, but explain the Vogel thing a little bit. We chose to retcon Harry's code in having Vogel in the last season of the original Dexter, which a lot of people disliked, but it's part of the lore now, so maybe have her get tied in there a little bit, or have some other things as far as Harry's backstory. But I wouldn't recommend retconning a whole lot of stuff. Like, we know where we wind up. Don't make the decisions that were made previously less impactful by making some drastic changes. Definitely stick to keeping the future as it was, but throw in some things that are unique to this that doesn't necessarily retcon the entire future story of Dexter. Number 4, I would throw this in there. I would have a villain Easter egg here. So Breaking Bad did this really effectively, I thought. I didn't watch all of Better Call Saul, but I remember watching that and seeing Tuco show up, and that was like a big, whoa, I'm interested in the story because I know that character. And I get that can be kind of hard to do because if you're a villain, you're probably going to get caught earlier. So having them included here could be a challenge. And there's a big factor of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul came out pretty close together. So you literally had Tuco not look that much older in Better Call Saul. So having this much gap between the original Dexter and now makes aging a bit of a concern if you're going to use the exact actor. But you can have a younger version of them. Like, one that comes to mind is you can have a younger Miguel Prado represented here because he's not doing crimes yet, but you can have him just present there. Obviously not too extensively because if he knows Dexter, then they don't meet in the future. So maybe having him just slightly showing up here and there in court or something like that. We obviously couldn't do Jimmy Smits, which is a bummer, but having some kind of Easter eggs, I feel like keeps fans interested. If they're definitely fans of the original show and they're not necessarily buying into the new storyline, you at least keep them engaged with the show long enough that maybe makes them say, okay, I'm going to stick around, and then they wind up getting engaged with the story. So having a few Easter eggs there, especially tied to villains, would be a cool inclusion for me personally. And then number 5, I talked about the characters and developing their lore, but I think on top of that, we have to have the actors accurately represent what the characters would do, the characters that we know from the original Dexter. I think the likeness was extremely well done as far as recreating the look of a lot of these characters. Like Batista's actor looks just like Batista, so really well done in selecting the cast. They just have to make sure they have the exact mannerisms and behaviors of them. Like Masuka's one that comes to mind. He has to have that same quirkiness that he had in the original show. And then the big factor is Patrick Gibson, obviously, as Dexter. That's going to be what everyone is thinking about because Michael C. Hall was such an impactful presence on the original show. Doing that with a different actor can be risky, but I think the inclusion of him as the voice is kind of helpful here. So maybe that could be something that makes it a little bit easier to have that transition into a new actor and he gets more comfortable with that. But I think he'll do a great job. Looking forward to seeing what he does and where he takes that character. I'm curious to see if fans over time become as attached to him as Dexter as Michael C. Hall. We'll have to see. Obviously, we're just getting our first season here and we'll make the judgments from there and see how successful this winds up being. But overall, that's my wish list and hopes for Dexter Original Sin. As I've talked about, Resurrection's really what I'm looking forward to. But with this being kind of an in-between opportunity to present more Dexter lore, I think it's a great chance to take here and looking forward to see what they ultimately put out with the Dexter Original Sin series. So what are your thoughts overall? As I talked about at the beginning, share some of your wish list or hopes that you have for this series as a whole. And yeah, hopefully we enjoy this one. I plan to do some more videos on this, maybe talk about some predictions I may have. Maybe I debate doing a weekly review of episodes. If you want to see that too, let me know and I'll be happy to kind of cover the episodes as they come out and give my thoughts on those. It's kind of risky to do that at times because sometimes you really love an episode and then you hate the next one and then you're kind of stuck trying to judge the season as a whole. Like if you asked me to rate New Blood as it came out, I would have been a little bit up and down, but at the end of the second to last episode, I would have put the series as a high point. And then we had the last episode, especially the last 20 minutes of the last episode, and I would have dipped it a whole lot. So it can be a little bit shaky when it comes to individual episode reviews, but yeah, happy to do that if you guys want to take a look at that too. So appreciate your guys' time. Thank you so much for watching and hope to talk to you again soon.